Tau Ceti Prime was a jewel among the human colonies, a vibrant world whose cities shone like clusters of hope amid the darkness of space. Its inhabitants had built a society of fierce independence and unyielding ambition. Yet for the Imperium, Tau Ceti Prime was nothing more than an inconvenient target to be erased. When the Imperial Command finally decided to quash the rebellion, they dispatched a massive occupation fleet, intent on bending this world to their will. The planet's defenses, though brave and resourceful, were no match for the titanic dreadnoughts that descended from the void. In a matter of hours, the once thriving colony was laid low by plasma cannons and the roar of starship engines. Amid the chaos, as cities burned and desperate screams mingled with the crackling of energy shields, a sensor officer in the heart of an Imperial flagship cried out in alarm. "Admiral!" Unknown signatures, everywhere. His voice trembled with panic, the sound lost among the cacophony of explosions and falling structures. Then came the impossible, not as a herald of another Imperial jump, but as an eerie, silent distortion in space, a shimmering ripple that defied the usual violet tear of conventional FTL travel. Like ghosts emerging from the void, a fleet of angular human vessels materialized above the burning ruins. Their hulls, scorched black by previous encounters, glowed with the ferocity of railguns at the ready. From the bridge of the flagship, Admiral Lyra Vane's cold, authoritative voice rang out over the comms. "Pathetic, dispatch the occupation fleet. Let their survivors grovel for mercy." But her orders dissolved into chaos as the Imperium's war machines were suddenly beset by attacks from every conceivable direction. The human vessels, unpredictable and relentless, struck at the very heart of the Imperial formation. Shields buckled, engines faltered, and in moments, the pride of the Imperium began to crumble under an assault it could neither understand nor counter. Deep in the command center of the human flagship UNS Jerusalem, Admiral Elena Maros studied the tactical hologram with eyes that had witnessed both loss and triumph. Before her, a swarm of 300 sleek ships danced through the void. With a grace born of necessity, they moved as if they were one, disappearing and reappearing with dizzying speed. Each teleportation brought them right into the maw of enemy fire, only to vanish again before the Imperium's dreadnoughts could marshal a coordinated response. Elena's voice was calm yet resolute as she directed the fleet. "Target their engines. Disable, don't destroy. Let's give them a chance to surrender," she ordered. Her strategy was as audacious as it was ingenious. Instead of obliterating every Imperial ship, she sought to neutralize them, reducing their once unstoppable war machines to helpless, stranded hulks in the vast emptiness of space. For the Imperium, built on brute force and frontal assaults, this style of warfare was utterly alien. Their dreadnoughts, designed for head-on battles, found themselves caught in a deadly ballet. In one moment, a massive vessel would be locked in combat. The next, it would be isolated, its engines crippled by a well-aimed salvo. The once confident admiral of the Imperium, Admiral Vane, barked desperate orders. Fall back to the capital." But there was nowhere to run. The human fleet had already anticipated every maneuver. With every teleportation jump, they cut off the Imperial retreat, ensnaring the enemy in a web of strategic brilliance and raw technological might. The chaos was nearly complete. The 7th Imperial Armada, once the crown jewel of the Imperium's military might, was left crippled and confused. It was as if the very fabric of space had turned against the ancient regime. For every moment the human vessel struck, the Imperium's forces sputtered, their shields disintegrating under the barrage from unexpected angles. The silence that followed each devastating hit was a grim reminder that in space, the true terror was not in the explosions, but in the realization that their unassailable technology had been outclassed by what they had dismissed as mere human ingenuity. News of the battlefield debacle spread like wildfire throughout the Imperium. In the grand imperial capital, a city of towering spires and opulent halls, the once steadfast generals and courtiers now trembled in disbelief. In a final, desperate act, The human fleet executed a maneuver that had been planned in the quiet hours of their command centers for decades. They teleported directly above the capital itself. There was no warning. One moment, the Imperium's command center was secure behind layers of defenses. The next, a vast armada appeared overhead like a dark omen blotting out the stars. The silence that fell was palpable. In the corridors of power, panic replaced the usual haughty calm. Alarm bells rang out as the reality of the situation sank in. Humanity had not only attacked their outposts, but now had boldly declared war on the heart of the Imperium. On the main view screen, Kale Thor's sneering visage was contorted into an expression of sheer disbelief. How? How did they do this? He rasped, his voice echoing in the great hall. His words were met with a flurry of panicked alien chatter as advisors scrambled to offer explanations that simply did not exist in their archaic models of warfare. In the midst of this disarray, Admiral Elena Maros addressed the assembled remnants of the Imperial leadership on a live transmission. Her voice, cool and commanding, resonated with the weight of history. You mistook patience for weakness. We've had slipstream technology for 50 years. But unlike you, we learned from the ashes of our mistakes, from the species you erased. Your FTL rips spacetime, ours folds it. You never looked beyond your own arrogance. Her words cut deeper than any laser blast. It was not merely a military defeat they were witnessing. It was the collapse of an ideology built on the presumption of eternal dominance. The human fleet's presence over the capital was a bold, unignorable demonstration. A declaration that the balance of power had shifted irrevocably. In the days that followed, as the stunned Imperium reeled from its humiliation, human envoys moved swiftly to secure the newly liberated worlds. Over 100 occupied planets that had once bowed under the weight of Imperial rule were freed, their local garrisons encircled and disarmed before any counterstrike could be mustered. What began as a single, stunning attack had blossomed into a full-scale revolution, the likes of which the galaxy had never before witnessed. The Grand Hall of the Imperial capital, once the seat of ruthless power and fear, now bore witness to a historic moment of both defiance and reconciliation. In a ceremony known as the Treaty of Luna, the former conquerors and the once dismissed were forced to come to a new understanding. Human soldiers, clad in uniforms that bore the scars of countless battles, now guarded the once hallowed corridors where only Imperial dignitaries had tread. Kale Thor, his once imposing scales dulled by the weight of defeat, faced the human delegation with barely concealed bitterness. You could have ruled the galaxy, he hissed, his voice a sibilant echo of a lost era. Why show mercy? Admiral Elena Maros, her eyes reflecting both the pain of past losses and the resolve of a people reborn, answered with a gentle smile that belied the steely determination behind it. We're not conquerors, we're survivors, and now so are you. In that moment, the old order was irrevocably upended. The human envoys produced, as a symbol of both victory and hope, the long-guarded schematics of their slipstream technology. Consider it a lesson, Elena said, the implication clear. Knowledge was not to be hoarded as a weapon but shared as a means of ensuring that tyranny would never again hold sway over the galaxy. The treaty was signed amid an atmosphere thick with cautious optimism. Imperial envoys, once arrogant and disdainful, now shuffled out of the hall with heads bowed in reluctant acknowledgement of a new order. And as the ink dried on the accords, envoys from dozens of other species, once crushed under the heavy boot of imperial conquest, gathered to draft new accords. They saw in humanity's example not only a means to resist oppression, but also a beacon of cooperation and mutual respect. 3 cycles later, in the years that followed the historic Treaty of Luna, the galaxy had begun to change. A once tyrannical regime was now forced to share power with a multitude of voices. Among the stars, alliances flourished and old grudges slowly melted away into a tentative peace. The slipstream technology that had so dramatically altered the course of galactic history became a tool of unity rather than division. It was now common to see alien fleets, once enemies, coordinating joint patrols along critical trade routes and boundaries, each vessel a reminder that cooperation could triumph over centuries of conflict. One crisp evening, in a quiet training facility nestled within the Imperial capital's newly reformed administration district, a young Imperial cadet approached a window overlooking the city. His eyes, still wide with the naive hope of a future unburdened by old hatreds, turned toward the distant stars. Summoning the courage to speak, he asked in a voice barely above a whisper, "Admiral, why did you share the slipstream schematics? They could be used against us as easily as they united us." Admiral Elena, who had long since grown accustomed to the questions of a new generation, paused before offering her measured reply. "Because true power isn't in hoarding fear," she said softly, her gaze fixed on the horizon where countless worlds shimmered in the twilight of a new era. "It's in proving that even the smallest voice can rewrite the stars." In that moment, the legacy of human resilience was etched into the annals of cosmic history. As the first alien slipstream ships once again leapt into the void, not to wage war, but to chart a course toward a shared destiny, the galaxy understood that the true measure of strength lay not in brute force, but in the courage to change, to learn, and to forgive. Long after the treaties were signed and the old empires dissolved into memory, the tale of humanity's audacious defiance continued to resonate. In quiet moments among the stars, historians, poets, and dreamers would recall the day when a dismissed species transformed the nature of warfare and shattered the chains of tyranny. Their story became a legend, a reminder that innovation and determination could triumph over even the most seemingly insurmountable odds. As starships of all colors and creeds sailed the galactic currents, the message endured. No empire, no matter how vast or ancient, was immune to the spark of change. And in the soft echo of teleporting fleets and the silent hum of folded space, every sentient being was reminded that hope, when nurtured, had the power to rewrite the very fabric of existence.